So today I will be discussing one of the many Harry Potter theories. If you haven't read the books, then go read them. And watching the movies doesn't count. For those of you who have actually read the books, I will be discussing the theory that Draco Malfoy is a werewolf. All information was found on DracoMalfoyIsAWerewolf.com. Link in the description. Now, personally, I don't think he's a werewolf. The big evidence that supports him being a werewolf is when in the 6th book, Draco shows Borgin of Borgin and Burke something on his arm. Harry assumes that this is the Dark Mark, but this is never confirmed. Draco also threatens to sick Fenrir Greyback on Borgin, and him being a close family friend seems kinda stretched unless you have the bite on your arm to prove it. Not to mention the fact that on the Astronomy Tower, the shield for letting those with the Dark Mark pass goes up right after Draco goes up, and comes down right before Draco comes down. Not to mention the fact that Draco is never really treated like a Death Eater, not even like some of the low-level ones like Wormtail, who is almost treated like trash. But he still has the respect of being a Death Eater. And Voldemort doesn't really seem to have a reason to make Draco a Death Eater. Then there are some smaller points, like Voldemort commenting on the fact that Draco could take care of Tonks and Lupin's cubs when the Death Eaters found out that they were having kids. And the fact that Voldemort never really punishes Lucius for his major screw-ups. And Lucius has some pretty major screw-ups, especially considering what the screw-ups are and the kind of person Voldemort is. I have a rebuttal for all of these reasons. Now, I'm not saying that all of them are concrete, but still, a rebuttal. Yeah. First is the whole Dark Mark thing. Saying that Draco doesn't have the mark just because Hermione says he doesn't have the mark is pretty flimsy reasoning. And having him have a werewolf bite doesn't really make any sense. I mean, sure, the threat of being bitten by a werewolf that is well known for turning people is pretty frightening, but I don't think that threat really stands if you have been bitten. You can hardly order someone to go bite someone else when they've already bitten you. And last time I checked, close family friends don't bite each other unless they're like, I don't know, 2. I think that the Dark Mark would be a little bit more intimidating than a werewolf bite. A werewolf is scary, yeah, but Voldemort is way scarier. And of course Draco was never treated like a true Death Eater. I would think that the only reason he got the mark was because his father was so involved and that Draco knew a lot about the Death Eaters. All the other Death Eaters that would know that Draco wasn't really a Death Eater yet. Besides, he was the only new one. I have a feeling that if the Death Eaters had taken on any other new recruits, they probably would have been treated very similar to Draco. They hadn't really gone through initiation or, hadn't really been part of Voldemort's squads, so they're not really gonna treat them like true Death Eaters yet until they've proven themselves. And Draco hasn't yet, so yeah. And the thing about the shield on the Astronomy Tower is the fact that I would imagine that the shield is a very difficult spell, and Draco probably can't perform it. And there's no need for it to go up until after Draco goes up. No one from Hogwarts battling any of the Death Eaters would know that the Astronomy Tower was important until somebody actually started to go up it. And they wouldn't know that a Death Eater had gone up there unless they saw them or unless the shield was up and they couldn't actually pass. And it came down before Draco passed through it because it was no longer necessary. I mean, everything that had needed to happen on the Astronomy Tower had already happened. And I always thought that Voldemort making Draco kill Dumbledore was part of Lucius's punishment. Lucius having to sweat it out as his son has to complete an impossible task. If Draco failed and couldn't kill Dumbledore or couldn't get the Death Eaters into Hogwarts, then I'm sure all the Malfoys would have been killed. And if Draco had actually succeeded in killing Dumbledore, then Voldemort would have successfully turned Draco into a murderer at the ripe old age of 16. And Draco may be many things, but a murderer is not one of them. Yeah, that seems like a pretty bad punishment to me. And the Cubs comment makes total sense if Draco isn't a werewolf. It's a jab at the fact that he's now related to a half-blood and a traitor, and if he were to babysit the Cubs and get bitten, then he would be a werewolf too. So, yeah, that seems like a pretty nasty comment to me. Not to mention the fact that Draco doesn't have the monthly disappearance of a werewolf. Every time he's missing, he's in the room of requirement, but there's not really a pattern to the disappearances. And there's also the fact that Hermione doesn't ever figure it out. She figured out that Lupin was a werewolf, so why wouldn't she figure it out about Draco? Or at least have suspicions, but never does she ever bring anything like that up at all. I mean, she doesn't even have we might be a werewolf bite instead of a Dark Mark thing whenever they're lurking outside Borgin and Burke's, so I don't think he's a werewolf. But that's just my opinion. So what do you guys think? Leave your comments below.
Toby determined, Gravity Falls gossiper. Do you really think this constitutes a wonder of the world?
Your microphone's a turkey baster, Toby.